Rich Ellis, what's your superpower and how does that serve your mission to help others?
Ooh, superpower. I like it. Crikey, it makes me feel like a superhero already, and I've only just started. um, I'd say that my superpower is probably consistency. I cut my teeth in the retail industry, and spent a number of years working on the shop floor. And the most common thing, the thing that was drilled into us the most was about making sure that our department or our store or whatever we were responsible for, having had different roles, it was the same every day. Like what the customer saw when they walked in was the same on a Monday, on a Thursday, on a Sunday, and that drives certain behaviours, right? As someone responsible for a number of people and a number of products, there's so many moving parts, and so you get good at doing the things that deliver that consistency. So I think that's something that's just now woven into my DNA, and I think that's sort of spilled over into what I do now in the health space. And I think that really helps
Very
me
good.
with
Thanks for
my
sharing.
consistency and
Flywheel
helping
leadership is
others with
about
theirs.
discovering and practicing the leadership systems that bring out the best in each of us and our teams. What's a story from your experience that comes to mind that exemplifies exceptional or unique styles of leadership?
I think the thing that stands out for me is the leaders who are good listeners, those who are good at speaking last, those who are good at taking in information from everybody else before making decisions. So they're not fly by the seat of the pants type people. They're very considered. They're empathetic, and they're able to, I guess, absorb all the necessary inputs to make the right decision for the best output. And I think depending how those people are, where their state is, and that's kind of where this overlaps with health for me, is those things can very much slip when somebody's not looking after themselves, when they're underslept, when they're undernourished, when they're under resourced. Those behaviors then will start to slip. And I think working on those areas that enable you to turn up and be the best version of yourself, so that you behave in those ways I just described, I think
Definitely.
would probably
Would
be
love to learn
my
a
way
little
of
bit more
describing
about
it.
your story. If you could tell us a little bit about you and kind of how you got to this type of business that
Mm,
you run currently, and how that's kind of become your life's work, and how that serves your clients.
sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So as I hinted, I started life in the UK. So I'm from the UK. I've been in New Zealand now for, I think, 27 years. So I'm kind of considered a Kiwi, really. Even though, depending on who you talk to, they'll say, "Oh, you haven't lost your accent." I'm like, really? And then other people will say, "Oh, you sound so much like a Kiwi. It's not funny." And moved from the UK to New Zealand to work for one of the then three chains of retailers in the grocery industry, to run stores over here. Worked for a number of years in that organization, and then a couple of smaller organizations, but still essentially doing the same thing, but just in different categories. And realized that it wasn't the thing I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I don't want to keep doing that thing. And so shifted towards health. I actually got into the exercise space. So the first steps for me were PTing and working with clients in a purely from an exercise point of view. And then I realized that the inputs that I was giving my clients weren't working for everybody. Some people were getting results, other people weren't getting results. And it kind of made me go on this journey, this education journey, where I worked with a mentor, still do, on an ongoing education program. And, you get the technical knowledge, but you also get the business and the personal development as well. And so I moved into health coaching. So, became qualified as a health coach, and that sort of brought with it a whole bunch of nutritional new knowledge as well, behavior change, and how people think and speak. I did some education with neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, which is a really nice sort of another layer to add into the coaching, and that helps me better identify what's going on in people's heads by the language that they're using. And so, yeah, it's been an ongoing journey. And so, with all this knowledge and sort of ongoing education that I had been absorbing, I sort of thought, well, how can I have more of an impact? Where can I deploy these skills and this knowledge so that I feel like I'm doing more than just sitting with someone and helping an individual? And so got into the corporate space, working with organizations that see the value in investing in their team and understand that there's a return on investment for both the business and everybody in it, so financially and individually. So that's where I spend my time, working with companies that see the light and understand that there's some benefit and some value in having someone like me around for the individuals in the organization. And like I said before, in terms of that leadership behavior, when you've got all the ducks in a row, you just turn up as a better version of yourself,
No
and
doubt.
the day goes
Rich,
better,
how does
and the week goes better, and the year goes better.
Show up for executives? Like, what types of things do you see? Maybe some of the less obvious ones, if they come to mind too.
Yeah. Great question. I think it's insidious. It's one of those things that flies under the radar, and it doesn't show up straight away, but it shows up after a period of time where you've been essentially burning the candle at both ends. You've been pushing. Work volume has probably increased. Hours are probably increased. Like I touched on before, lack of resources or reduced resources means that more pressure is put onto the existing team. So those are early indicators that could be the pathway. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is. I think if people are doing work they love, I think that makes a difference. That sense of purpose that they bring to work every day makes a big difference. But I think if there's a value misalignment, if there is excessive, work hours and workload, sometimes that can then sort of be the spark that sends people down that burnout path. And some of those signs will be things like, starting to sleep less well, like disruption to sleep or quality of sleep is reduced just because the body's in that fight or flight mode for so long that it's just not able to decompress and set itself up for a good night's sleep. More irritability, so just being a little bit more snappy. And I remember doing the same thing when I went through it with my kids. Were getting the raw end of the deal. It wasn't fair. They were the butt of the behavior. And then when I realized how I was behaving, that was kind of a really big wake up call. Other things like reliance on caffeine. So caffeine is a useful stimulant because it can help you get through, particularly a long day if you're working into the night. But you're essentially borrowing energy from the future. It's not free. What you're doing by using caffeine as a crutch, and that again was some of the things that I was doing was that coffee a day or two or three or four, and realized that actually I used to only have one, and why am I now having three or four? So all of these things can start to creep and have an impact on your behavior, but also that irritability and that concentration. All of those sorts of things start to slip as well. So your productivity can drop. You may become a little more cynical about things, saying things in meetings that you might not have said previously, and people will pick up on that. Their radars are pretty well tuned, and I think it's important on colleagues who do see that to notice that and say something and say, look, are you okay? Is everything, what's going on? Is your team under pressure? Whatever the scenario might be. So those are just some of the
Rich,
things
those
that
really resonate with me. I mean, I've seen it myself at different points in my career, but also certainly you can see it really well in others at times too, right? Where you realize something's going on, and then you kind of put two and two together, and you're like, oh, they're getting really burned out, right? So take it from before you work with a client to the results you see through the engagement. Like, you walk us through kind of how you engage with your clients and what you take them through. Would be helpful to understand.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so initially it starts with a gathering of information. So there's a bit of a pre-process before even submitting a proposal, which obviously I need to get sign off on as well. But it's about finding out what's going on in the organization. You know, what are the hot spots? What are the pressure points? Where are the areas that are holding people back? So there's a collection of sort of survey information and interviews with individuals or teams, so that just gives me a starting point to say, hey, look, this is the theme I'm seeing. These are the hot spots I think we should look at. And therefore, the proposal then comes in under that and says, right, I think we need this across 6, 12 months. Do you like the look of that? Does that look like something that you can sign off on? And then it's a matter of a combination of workshop and coaching. So workshop would be where I'm delivering information, and then the coaching is the follow-up with individuals and or groups to identify any misunderstandings, any questions they want to ask that weren't asked on the day, and then what action they're going to take as a result of some of that learning. So it's about making sure their knowledge is there, but also the accountability of taking action, right? Because as we know, knowledge is not action. It's only one part of the puzzle, and really where the rubber hits the road is that accountability. So what is it that you feel you need to work on? What is it you're prepared to do? And when are you going to do it? And what does that look like? And then I can then follow up the next time and go, right, how did you go on that thing? How would you score yourself out of 10 on the thing you said you were going to do? It might be a 5. Okay, well, you're going okay. How can we get that up to a 6? What do we need to do? What do you need to do differently? And ideally, we're looking for things that aren't going to take enormous amounts of time, because the last thing I want to do is rock up to an organization and people just rolling their eyes going, oh, here we go again. Here's another seminar. Here's more stuff, more stuff that we have to do on top of the things we're already doing. So it's about finding the behaviors that may already be there, but changing them, tweaking them. And finding, as James Clear says in his book Atomic Habits, it's the 1%ers. It's the little things that, when you find a few of them, together they make a difference. And that way it makes it achievable for people. So if that works across an organization, and obviously you're not going to get everybody in the whole organization, it's always a bell curve. There's the people that will do everything, those in the middle, and the people who will do nothing. And so if we can just make that bell curve just a little bit wider and capture a few more than might have done otherwise, then I feel like we're winning. And then there's some measurability. We can go back and go, right, let's resubmit those questions that we did at the beginning. How are things going now? And ask the same questions. How are you going now? And do you feel like some of the issues that were here 6-12 months ago are now out of the way, or have you overcome them? And
makes sense.
You can then,
do you engage with executives one-on-one only, or does it always include the leadership team as well? Okay.
Both. Yeah. It depends. I mean, obviously, it does start with the leadership. Any program is only going to work when the leadership are on board, and I've had both scenarios where everybody's in, boots and all, and it goes well. And other situations where we want stuff, but you're going to have to do it all. And it's like, hang on a minute. It's not about me doing it all. It's about you participating. And you see the fallout from that, because people aren't on board. They don't see leadership doing the thing. Who's this rich guy and what's he all about? Because, why does he keep sending me emails? So, it can be very, very different. But it depends what the organization is looking for, whether they do want their leadership to participate only, or whether that works sort of more broadly across the organization, or
makes sense
in teams if
Rich,
it's
what's
a
the most
large
fulfilling
organization.
aspects of your
depends.
work?
That's a really easy one, Graham. The most fulfilling one is seeing that change, seeing the change that the people make and the impact that it has on their life. And individually, you have conversations where people may not share in a group situation, and they'll tell you that some of the things that have changed for their lives, and it's it's quite meaningful. It's quite impactful when they're prepared to share that with you, and you realize that what you've done has made a difference. It's not just them as an individual. It's their inner circle as well. It's their friends. It's their family. There's that ripple effect. And it's so true. It has a phenomenal impact on people's lives. And when they see it and they realize that the efforts that they've made have changed things, it's difficult to go back because they realize what the formula is. And
any examples that come to mind where you could share anonymously, of course, of like specifics on, hey, this is where this person was at, and this is where they ended up after a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I was working with a software company, and my liaison person was this person. And so I had a reasonable amount of contact with her. And her job was sort of services. She was responsible for making sure all the things that weren't in people's job descriptions were taken care of. Like, are the lights on? Is the coffee machine full? Is the IT thing, is the inkjet filled, inkjets filled, the toner? All the stuff that everyone just takes for granted. There's a person responsible for that stuff, but that means that person's kind of like all over the building, like 2-story building, wherever something is needed, that person has to be there. And so it's quite a busy role. And also this organization was working on the American time clock. So they would wake up, or some of them would start at sort of 5 a.m. New Zealand time. And that would mean that, probably there would still be people in the office 12 hours later, even maybe longer, 12, 14 hours later if they were working a long New Zealand day. And this person kind of had to be around for most of that, which meant a really, really long, drawn-out day. And so when I got there, she was great, really helpful, really energetic, really enthusiastic, but just running from pillar to post. And my perception was that, this wasn't a sustainable behavior. And so when we had a chance to have a chat, I said, so how are you feeling? Oh, pretty tired. How are you sleeping? Not very well. How much coffee are you drinking? Quite a lot. There was all the common signs, and like this was what was sustaining her. And sometimes she would leave for the day, get a phone call, get, oh, such and such is not working. Can you come back and fix it? So she'd get back in the car and come back to work. I'm like, what? Anyway, so long story short, having talked to her about some of the things that I thought would be useful for her to tweak and change, I came back for another workshop a month or two later, and same person, still doing the same job, but everything had slowed down. She was, even her language, like, the way people speak, the words they use, the speed they use, the intensity of their conversation tells you a lot about what's going on in their head. And she was way more considered. She was, oh, I'm going really well, and I'm sleeping better, and I've cut my coffee down, and I'm drinking more water, and I'm not rushing around so much. I'm like, hallelujah. Clearly she was not aware of how she was behaving. And so just some gentle feedback from me gave her an insight into what was going on and how that could become a problem for her from a health perspective. Ultimately you end up disrupting your hormones. That can have an impact on, worst case, fertility and other things, energy. And so it was so great to see that she'd taken on board some of what I said, and it was showing up in her behavior, and she was still doing a great job. But it was just how she was doing it. So
it's amazing.
I love that one because
Rich,
it's sort of like,
oh my
goodness.
Walk us through a little bit more about what you see with, putting work aside, right? The business work that's going to be there. But let's talk about health, wellness, sleep, food, diet, those types of things. How much you see those contributing positively or negatively to, before and after type of stories that you've seen. Like, you just walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, I think, I don't think we can underestimate the power of those things. The sort of three big, it was always sort of pillars, but actually it's slightly different. Sleep isn't a pillar anymore. Sleep is the foundation on which nutrition and movement, I say movement because exercise is a part of movement, sits on, right? So if that sleep's not right, there isn't much point in being really there is some point, but not much, in terms of getting that food right. Because if you're restricting calories because you're wanting to lean up or lose some weight, you will lose more muscle mass than fat. The shift of weight loss will come from muscle if you're underslept. So you've got to get the sleep right first. Then you can start building on top of that in terms of getting the food right, the nutrition, and how much movement you're getting into your body. Because we know that also energizes us. We know that metabolically, if we don't move, things go backwards. So I think they can't be underestimated. So it's getting those things in place, and it does take time. It's not an overnight job. If someone's sleep is disrupted or out of sync, it takes a bit of time to get into a rhythm that works for them. Once that's in place, then it's right. Okay, what's going on with your nutrition? What can we do to tweak that? And how much movement are you getting into your day? Are you taking breaks? Are you getting outside? Are you getting to the gym? Are you getting your dog walks in? Whatever it may be. So yeah, those things can't be underestimated, Graham. It's easy for those things to slip as well. When the pressure's on, some of those things can go out of the window. And then the simple thing is, like I've got this, for people listening, not watching, I've got this glass of water that follows me around wherever I go. And, when I get a chance to sit down and do some work, even if I'm on my feet, the water's not far away. And so I'm just looking after that hydration level, because we've all been there where you get to about 3 o'clock and you go, God, I feel like I could just have a little nap. And you go and drink a decent amount of water, and about 10 minutes later, you're like, I don't need that nap. I'm fine. So simple dehydration can make you feel absolutely groggy and jet lagged or sleepy. And so it's just keeping those basics going. And once those are in place and, they're locked in back to that consistency piece, then you can start to really sort of think about, what's the cherry on top that
tell me about energy.
Is going to make you
I see a lot of stuff about energy in your work. Would really like to hear from you on why is that important? What's that mean to you? However you would like to talk about it.
Yeah. Thank you. No, it's great. I'd sort of nickname myself the energy coach because I've been in the place where you don't have any. And so cortisol is a really important hormone, which we may have heard of because it's kind of linked with stress. And its job is to mop up some of the damage that comes through, what happens when our bodies go through stress. And, that's a daily occurrence. But its actual job one of its main jobs is to get us out of bed in the morning and give us the energy we need for the day. So when the sun comes up, that's a signal to our brains that it's the start of the day and our cortisol shoots up. And it peaks around sort of mid to late morning, and then it slowly drops down into the afternoon. And by the evening, it's quite low, so melatonin can pick up, and that's one of our sleep hormones, helps us feel sleepy and tired at about 8, 9, 10 o'clock. And then we're ready to go and have a good night's sleep. Now, if those two things are out of kilter, that's the beginning of some disruption to our energy system. So one of the things I like to tell people is try and get themselves outside in the morning to get that sunshine into their brains, so that you get that nice spike of cortisol, but you also wash away any of the melatonin from the night before. So that sleepiness kind of goes away and you feel sharp. So that's a really important part. The other thing is that I talked about that cortisol dropping down. Regularly I talk to people who have that 3 o'clock slump. And if you look at the graph where cortisol drops, it's around that sort of 2, 3 o'clock. And if you think about lunchtime, when you eat a meal at lunchtime, obviously your blood sugars go up whenever we eat. But if it's carb heavy, they'll go up quite high and then they'll come back down again. You'll have that crash. And that crash will typically coincide when cortisol's getting quite low. So we've got low cortisol and low blood sugar, and we wonder why we're feeling a little bit sleepy at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's an interesting combination when you look at the graph. So it's about having the right food at lunchtime, so it's not too carb heavy, so you don't get that crash, but also taking the opportunity to hydrate, taking the opportunity to go for a walk, and that will just lift up that cortisol level just that little bit and give you that boost so that people don't slump at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and then just drag themselves to 5 o'clock before the end of the day. And the other thing to think about in terms of energy is the fact that, we're not designed to just go and go and go and go and go. We're not robots. we need to take time out to rest and recover, mostly for our brains. Our brains need it. Our bodies will keep going, but our brains need these little cycles called ultradian cycles. So we've got circadian cycles, so around the day, 1 day, 24 hours. We have ultradian cycles, which run through our day about every 90 minutes. So if you can work your day into a 90-minute block, it means that you can take a break, come back refreshed. It could be just get a glass of water. It could go make a coffee. It could be walk around the block, go again after about sort of 10, 20 minutes. And then you've got another 90-minute cycle before you need to take another break. And I think if we can work with our biology and work with how our bodies are actually designed to work, as opposed to force them to do things they're not, I think that will help people realize much better energy gains throughout the day, which leads straight into productivity. So if you manage your energy, you probably don't need to worry too much about managing your time, because you will have constant energy. When you don't, then it's like, oh, well, when am I going to do that? Because, oh, no, I don't think I can do that at 4 o'clock. If you have the ability to look after that energy, and obviously it comes from a good night's sleep as well. It's not just about what you do during the day. So it's a complete recipe. Those are just some of the things that I talk to organizations about when it comes to energy, because there is a formula, and it takes time to find it. But I think when you do, it's magical, because you can have
What's one thing you've changed your mind on over the span of your life or career, Rich?
Oh, good question. Good question. And I did write this down, and I think it's probably one of those questions I shouldn't just spontaneously answer. I should actually go and see. I should actually go and see what it was that I said. And I don't think I can find it. What did I change my mind on? Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, okay. So I think the answer to that is that never assume you know the full answer and the facts about people. I think one of my values is curiosity. So staying curious. So it's very easy to get caught in the trap of thinking that you know what's going on with people, you know what's best for them, you have all the answers. Nobody has all the answers. And I think from a coaching perspective, it's curiosity that does the work, because it means that I ask the right questions. I find out what's going on for people, because they are the experts of their lives. And I think when I got into the health industry, I felt like I had all the answers, and I would tell people what to do. You need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Nobody likes to be told what to do. We know that. But I think the more knowledge you acquire, the more curious you become. So it's more about finding out about the person. So I think I changed my mind big time about how I work with people, because the more curious I am, the better their outcomes. The less curious I am, the
what have we missed that we really should talk about?
Good question. Good question. Yet again. There's so much, Graham. Where do we start? Well, we've touched on sleep, we've touched on movement, touched on nutrition. I think, and sleep's obviously a really critical one. I think it's probably one of the areas that I love to talk about is that gut health piece. So, talked about nutrition, but I think the power of our gut, it's probably the oldest part of our body in terms of, it's nicknamed the second brain, and really, some people go, actually, it's the first brain, because it was probably doing its job before we had this prefrontal cortex, which is actually the most important part for us as human beings. And yet the information that goes from our gut to our brain is more than the information that goes from our brain to our gut. So there's this super highway, and there is more information coming from our gut. And an example of the communication that you'll get from your gut is like butterflies when you're nervous. You get that sense in your stomach, that little bit of trepidation, right? That's your gut talking to you, saying something's going to happen here, and you probably need to be ready for it. And there is so much stuff that goes on in there, and it's still early days in terms of what's been discovered in terms of our gut. But there are more microbes in our body than we have cells in our body. We are outpopulated by our gut microbiome, and that's got to tell you something about the importance of it to our our survival as human beings. But I think the reason for me suggesting this is that I think with the standard American diet or the Western diet has got us into a problem, into a place where our bodies don't recognize what's coming into it anymore. And I think it's the place we need to go back to cure or fix a lot of our problems. And by eating well, eating natural, whole, unprocessed food is a really, really important start for brain health, for body health, for gut health. And I think when we look after our guts, so many other things will go right in our bodies, and particularly our brains, right? Because we need a certain amount of neurotransmitters for different jobs. That particularly serotonin, which is made in our gut, a lot of it is made in our gut. A lack of serotonin is where depression and some of those mental illness conditions start. And so I think we can't underestimate the power of looking after it and giving it what it needs, because then it will look after us. So again, that's a whole nother topic, but I think it's a really big one, and it's one I try not to miss when I'm working with organizations, because we kind of just take it for granted, like a garbage disposal system. It's not. It's so much more. So so I think that's a big one, Graham, and I think
for sure
it's one to
Ritz, what do you
add
want
into the
those
mix
you've
when
worked
I'm
with to
working
say
with
about
people.
your impact on them?
Ooh, what do I want them to say? I want them to say that it was worth it. I want them to say that it was good value, and I want them to say that they would recommend someone else to work with me as well. So I think that's probably the ultimate compliment, is the referral. So yeah, it's reasonably straightforward.
Right.
It's those
How can
things,
listeners
and
best find
that I had an
you or
impact.
follow your mission?
Excellent. Yeah. On LinkedIn, Graham. LinkedIn's a beautiful place. It's where you can find all the smiley, enthusiastic people out in the world who are sharing lots of gems. So yeah, Richard Ellis. Everyone calls me Rich, but formerly Richard Ellis on LinkedIn. Come and look me up, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with people, or even offer what I call the job interview presentation. So that's where I'll go to their organization and deliver a presentation for free. That's why I call it the job interview. And so it's a way of me being able to gather information about the organization by asking questions, but also share some of my knowledge, and hopefully leave them better than I found them, with a view to going, hey, wish you'd like me to come back? Let's draw up a proposal.
Thank you for your time today. We appreciate it. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much, Graham. Great to be here.